At Thanksgiving, they handed Martha cold leftovers and a mop wrapped in ribbon. They laughed behind her back. Her daughter-in-law called her the smell of the past. What they didn't know? She still owned the house beneath their designer heels. Her son forgot who paid the down payment. She reminded him, with a court order. They mocked her silence. She answered with signatures. By the time they begged for mercy, his mother had the keys and the deed. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The wine hadn't even been poured before she was told she smelled like something that needed to be replaced. Not to her face, of course. Cowards rarely offer cruelty directly. But Martha heard it all, clear as the crystal glasses clinking behind Camille's back. The November air still clung to Martha's coat when she stepped into her son's house. The foyer smelled like cinnamon and burnt sugar, store-bought pies reheated for show. She gently slipped off her shoes, placed them by the door like she always had, and offered a small smile to Camille, who had appeared at the kitchen archway with a smirk too polished to be real. "Look who finally made it!" Camille called out, voice sing-songy, perfectly pitched for the guests gathered in the living room. Martha's hands tightened around the wrapped dish she brought, homemade stuffing, the one Aaron used to ask for every year. No one reached for it when she set it on the counter. She made her way toward the coat rack when she paused, hearing Camille's voice from the kitchen, hushed but sharp. "Yeah, she's here. Smells like, I don't know, old carpet? Musty or something. She's sweet, but come on. It's getting embarrassing." Martha froze. Her spine didn't stiffen, nor did she gasp. She simply stood there, blinking once, then slowly removed her coat, folding it with precision as if the insult hadn't landed where it did. She turned back toward the dining table and noticed the place settings. 8 chairs, 7 filled with laughter and wine. The 8th had a ceramic pumpkin centerpiece blocking its view, no chair for her. Camille looked over and said, "Oh, I thought you'd be more comfortable at the island. You know, it's higher. You don't have to crouch." Before Martha could respond, Aaron gave a helpless half-smile, too cowardly to question the arrangement. Martha nodded once and walked to the island, where a mismatched bar stool and a cold, re-plated serving of food awaited her. Her fork scraped against the plate. No one made eye contact. Flashback. She remembered the year Aaron and Camille bought this house, 4 years ago, barely a year after Martha had buried her husband. The same year she'd liquidated her modest annuity to help them make the down payment. "I want to invest in your family," she had said. "In your future." Camille had cried. Aaron had hugged her tight. There had been no mention of musty smells back then, only gratitude, only need. Dinner passed in a blur of laughter that never included her. When she excused herself, no one asked where she was going. She climbed the stairs slowly, the walls lined with framed photos, none with her in them. The guest room still smelled like the lavender sachets she'd left there months ago. Same bedding, same dent in the pillow. A designated space, a place to be stored. She moved to the bottom drawer of the old armoire, left untouched, forgotten. Carefully she pulled it open and retrieved the maroon folder wrapped in faded newspaper. Inside, crisp documents. Tax filings, a notarized letter, a joint purchase agreement, and the deed. Her fingers trembled, not from frailty but from memory. Her name, Martha Jameson, still printed beneath Aaron's, under joint ownership agreement. They had never removed her. She sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of years pressing down like a second spine. Slowly, methodically, she pulled her phone from her handbag and began snapping pictures, one by one. Every page. The closet door creaked faintly behind her from the shift in weight. She didn't flinch. She had flinched enough for a lifetime. Then she pulled the drawer fully open, revealing a small velvet pouch tucked into the corner. Inside, a flash drive she had once used to back up household records, forgotten after her husband's passing. She pocketed it. Downstairs, laughter rose again, but the voices no longer sounded sharp. They sounded small. She stared at the final page, then stood, straightened her spine, and smoothed the creases on her cardigan. She whispered to herself, not bitter, not angry, just certain. "It's time." She opened her contacts, scrolled down, and tapped a name she hadn't called in over a decade. The phone rang once. "John," she said softly, "I need a favor. Do you still handle property law?" The voice on the other end laughed warmly. "For you? Always. Let's talk about what they forgot you owned." End. Martha takes photos of a deed where her name still appears. They praise their foundation, but they forgot who poured it. Martha sat at the edge of the island counter again, the same stool as last night, the same awkward position that kept her back slightly hunched. Her fork moved slowly through scrambled eggs that tasted like powdered mix. Across the room, Camille's laugh sliced through the hum of morning conversation. "Mom's flying in next week," Camille announced to no one in particular, setting her almond milk latte on a coaster as though performing for invisible cameras. "We'll finally have space once everything's cleared out." "Cleared out?" The words landed like a slap. Martha didn't look up. She chewed slowly, tasting more salt in her mouth than the food. Camille's tone was airy and casual, but every word floated with a purpose. "Your mother's moving in?" Aaron asked, not quite surprised, just slow to respond. "She'll use the guest room," Camille said, then smiled, cutting a quick glance toward Martha. "I mean, she'll need more care soon. She's not like some people who can do everything themselves." The implication hung in the air like a fog no one dared acknowledge. Aaron said nothing. Later, as she collected her coffee cup, Martha moved with quiet deliberation. She passed the living room, where Camille flipped through home design magazines. Camille's voice drifted to the hallway in clipped tones. Her phone was on speaker. "She's sweet, but slow. My mom can't live here with her. It's too much. We need that space back." A pause. "She smells like mothballs. Aaron says her days here are numbered anyway." Martha stood behind the corner wall, her grip tightening on the ceramic handle of the mug. The warmth seeped into her skin, but couldn't thaw the chill in her chest. Back upstairs, in the room they'd graciously let her use, she opened the dresser drawer and pulled out her small notebook. The one she'd kept for years, not for memories, but for facts. Dates, deposits, receipts, every penny she gave. It was all still there, including the $82,000 she wired to Aaron's bank account 5 years ago. The sum that became the foundation of this house, the house they now thought they owned completely. She flipped the page and found the contact number for Janet Myers. Janet, her old church friend, the one who had worked as a real estate legal clerk for 20 years before retirement. Her fingers hovered over the number. Then she dialed. "Janet?" Martha said softly. "Well, I'll be," came the warm voice on the other end. "It's been ages, Martha. How are you?" Martha paused, then said with deliberate calm, "Do you remember helping me draft that joint ownership clause back in 2018? For Aaron's house?" "Of course I do," Janet replied. "You had me run the documents through the lawyer in your husband's firm before we finalized it. Why?" "I found the paperwork," Martha said. "Still signed, still notarized. But I never remember signing a release, did I?" A short silence. Then Janet's voice dropped in tone. "You never signed that release form, did you?" "No," Martha said. "Well then," Janet said, her voice now taut with meaning, "you've still got legal weight in that house, and if Camille's planning anything permanent, she's standing on your name." Martha closed her eyes and let the words settle into her bones like steadying bricks. She didn't smile. Not yet. But her next words were clear as crystal. "Send me whatever you can find in the archives, quietly." "I'll do you one better," Janet replied. "I'll drive it to you myself." Martha hung up, walked to the mirror, and looked at herself for the first time in what felt like years. Her face was older, yes, but it was still hers. And behind her reflection, in the dusty hallway of a house she helped pay for, she didn't see weakness anymore. She saw the foundation they were about to trip over. The friend says, "You never signed that release form, did you?" They buried me in documents, hoping I'd forget. But I remembered where I kept the shovel. The smell of dust and cardboard met Martha like an old friend. Familiar, musty, honest. She stood just inside the narrow corridor of her apartment's storage unit, lit by a flickering ceiling bulb that hummed like it hadn't been touched in years. A cold breeze from the hallway brushed against her sweater, and still she didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the stack of plastic bins and banker boxes labeled in her handwriting, A. House Docs, Taxes 2018 to 2019, Mike, Legal. She rolled her sleeves up slowly. The real kind of work was about to begin. Martha knelt beside the third box and opened it, her fingers grazing over brittle file tabs. Deed records, she whispered, as though speaking them aloud would summon ghosts. Mortgage payment confirmations, property tax duplicates, even a crumpled napkin with Camille's handwriting, notes from a brunch where she'd joked about turning Martha's old bedroom into a Pilates room. She pressed past the ache in her chest, and then she saw it. A red folder, aged, frayed at the corners but intact. She pulled it out, breath held tight. Inside were pages she hadn't seen in years, a notarized partial ownership agreement dated March 3, 2018. Her name, her signature, her power. Her hand trembled, not with fear, but release. All these years they assumed she was just a placeholder, a fading relic of generosity and grief. But here, in black ink and official stamps, was the truth. Martha Marie Halpern owned 49% of the home Aaron and Camille lived in. She sat back on the concrete floor, documents cradled in her lap like a child. Outside, footsteps echoed faintly. A cart rolled by. The world kept spinning. But Martha wasn't spinning anymore. She was planting. By the time she stepped into her attorney's office the next morning, the early sunlight was warming the window panes. Mahogany shelves lined with law books towered around her like silent guards. Linda, her lawyer of 15 years, blinked in surprise as Martha placed the red folder carefully on her desk. "I think I found the heartbeat of their house," Martha said. Linda opened the folder slowly, scanning the pages with narrowing eyes. After a pause, she looked up. "This is legitimate, stamped, witnessed, and very much enforceable." Martha leaned in, voice low. "Can I do anything with this?" Linda didn't miss a beat. "You can do everything." Martha sat straighter. "Even if they've made renovations, repainted walls, claimed full ownership in front of friends?" Linda nodded. "Ownership isn't about paint. It's about contracts. They can remodel the kitchen all they want. If your name's on the paper, it's your kitchen too." Martha exhaled, the first true breath she'd taken in weeks. "I want to proceed quietly. No fireworks. Not yet." Linda smiled, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. "Understood. Silent moves shake the ground hardest." She flipped to the last page, then looked back at Martha, tone shifting slightly. "If you really want to begin, do you want to start with a lien?" Outside, the wind picked up. But inside the office, Martha felt steadier than she had in years. The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. She didn't answer yet, but she didn't have to. Not yet. Lawyer asks, "Do you want to start with a lien?" The box was light, but the insult inside it landed with weight. Wrapped in pink tissue paper was a yellow mop, floral printed gloves, and a note that said, "Since you love being so helpful. Happy birthday, Martha." Signed with a heart. Camille's signature was the nail in the coffin. Martha stood in her apartment kitchen, staring at the contents of the cardboard package. The gloves still smelled of the factory plastic they were made in. Cheap. Thoughtless. Her hands didn't shake. Her breath stayed even. But her mouth tugged into a faint smile, one corner lifting like the curl of paper meeting flame. She picked up the mop by the wooden handle, turned it over once, twice, then set it gently beside the recycling bin. On the counter nearby sat her real birthday gift, a scanned copy of a court filing, one she'd just submitted to the county recorder's office under her lawyer's guidance. The quiet kind of document people never see coming, until it drags their names into red tape they can't untangle. She tapped her phone. Filed. The message from Linda read. 3 simple letters. A silent cannon shot. Flashback. 2 summers ago. Camille in her oversized sunglasses, sipping cold brew like it was champagne. Her voice had rung sharp through the back patio, too loud for a joke, too rehearsed to be spontaneous. "You didn't contribute anything, Martha," Camille had said, laughing toward her wine glass. "But hey, free rent's still a contribution, right?" Martha had blinked, nodded, and walked inside to refill the iced tea. She didn't cry then either. She just waited. Back in the present, Martha opened her laptop and pulled up the file she and Linda had prepared, a lien notice, based on the partial deed ownership she still held on Aaron's house. Camille might think she was just wallpaper, an accessory to their home story, but paperwork didn't forget. It archived. Attached to that lien notice were two other important findings. First, a transcript of Aaron's refinance application, where he'd failed to disclose her as a co-owner. Second, a notarized clause stating that any refinancing without co-owner acknowledgement would be grounds for contestation and freeze. Linda's voice rang clearly in her head from their last meeting. "If the bank learns he withheld your name during refinance, they'll deny the mortgage outright. No court needed." Martha closed her laptop, then picked up the mop once more. Its head now limp, symbolic. She wrapped it back up in the same pink tissue paper, placed it neatly back in the box, and scribbled something on the back of Camille's note. "Your turn. Court's in session." A week passed with no noise. Then, just after noon on a rainy Wednesday, Martha's phone lit up. "Linda. They got the denial." Martha. "Did they call?" Linda. "No. But the bank did. Aaron's line of credit was frozen this morning." Martha poured herself tea, calm in the ritual. Lemon and honey, gentle steam rising. She imagined the chaos unfolding in their kitchen. Camille's raised voice, Aaron's confusion, the frantic checking of documents they'd never understood in the first place. Maybe they were still looking for someone to blame. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally remembering the person who helped them build the foundation. Aaron's mortgage application is denied. The call came at 8:37 a.m., too early for anything good. Aaron's voice cracked as he spoke, not from sleep, but from pressure. "Excuse me, what do you mean the co-owner blocked the refinance?" He stood barefoot in the kitchen, coffee forgotten, blood draining from his face. Across town, Martha stirred honey into her tea, calm as a winter sky. She already knew what the bank had told him. The toaster clicked behind Aaron, unnoticed. Camille strolled in with her robe tied too tight and eyes half-lidded with sleep. "Who was that?" she mumbled, yawning. Aaron didn't answer immediately. He held his phone like it might burn him. "That was Chase Mortgage," he finally said. "They said the house refinance was denied because of co-ownership complications." Camille blinked once, then again. "Co-what?" Aaron slowly turned to face her. "They said Mom's name is still on the deed. She's a legal co-owner." Camille laughed once, short and sharp like glass cracking. "That's ridiculous. We had her sign those transfer documents 2 years ago." Aaron shook his head. "Apparently not. Or not the right ones." Across town. Martha sat by the window, tea in hand, sunlight catching the rim of her cup. On her laptop screen was the updated property registry, her name, fully visible now. No redactions, no hidden footnotes, just Martha Green, 49% ownership. She hit send on the email. Subject, regarding today's mortgage call. Body, check the public records, you'll see my name. Best, Mom. Back at the house, Aaron's inbox pinged. He opened the email, skimmed it, then turned the screen toward Camille. Her lips tightened. "She's bluffing," Camille said quickly, but there was no conviction in her voice. "She attached the property records," Aaron said. "It's real." Camille's face flushed. She turned toward the kitchen island, digging her fingers into the marble edge. "Do you realize what this means?" she hissed. "My mother is coming next month. She's already downsized and sold her house. The guest room is for her." Aaron looked at her with dull eyes. "Well, maybe you should have double-checked the deed before calling a loan officer." "Oh, so it's my fault now?" Their voices rose. Accusations mingled with confusion. In the middle of it all, a package from a home decor catalog lay unopened on the counter, the words, "Welcome home, Nana," stamped on the box. Martha leaned forward at her apartment window, watching raindrops form patterns on the glass. Her apartment overlooked the same street she'd once walked with her late husband. Every corner held memory, but none of them tethered her anymore. On her kitchen counter lay Camille's pink-tissued mop gift. Next to it, a sleek black folder with her county file receipts and legal correspondence. She was done being the footnote. She had become the signature again. The fallout at Aaron's house moved quickly. Within 24 hours, the bank formally notified them that the refinance process had been frozen, pending ownership clarification. Camille panicked. She began rifling through drawers in the home office, opening every folder she'd once ignored. Tax returns, utility bills, and the original home sale agreement. A blur of paper that meant little now. Later that night, when Aaron had gone to bed in silence, she sat at her laptop, her perfectly manicured nails tapping urgently. She searched Martha Green financial assets. Then, can a co-owner remove another owner from property? Then, how to contest elder co-ownership. Her breath quickened. For the first time, Camille felt the house didn't belong to her. Not anymore. Camille begins digging into Martha's finances, quietly but obsessively. She doesn't want to know the truth. She wants to control it. And Martha? She's already 5 steps ahead. The first thing she bought was a lipstick, not red, not loud, but a deep plum shade named Resolve. She didn't wear it for anyone. She wore it like armor. Martha stared at her reflection, shoulders back, pearls in place, the cardigan gone. Every insult they threw had stitched a new thread into this woman, and now she wasn't just dressing up, she was dressing forward. The luxury retirement villa was nestled between oak trees and calm water, its white facade glinting beneath winter sunlight. A valet opened the door for Martha as she stepped out of the cab in sleek black pants, a tailored coat hugging her shoulders. "Welcome to Glenfield Estates," the concierge said, smiling. Inside, polished floors reflected the chandelier light. The scent of fresh eucalyptus mingled with brewing espresso from a nearby lounge. Martha had visited this place once, years ago, when she believed she couldn't afford to breathe near it. Now, she moved like she belonged. "Would you like to see the penthouse level, Ms. Green?" the agent asked, flipping through her clipboard. Martha nodded. Yes, the one facing the gardens. The elevator ride was quiet, not because there was nothing to say, but because Martha was choosing silence now. Not the kind they imposed on her in that house, but the kind that preceded power. When the doors opened, soft light spilled into the hallway. The penthouse had high ceilings, heated floors, and a wraparound terrace that whispered luxury. She walked slowly through the living room, touching the smooth edge of the marble countertop, imagining her paintings hung on the wall, imagining evenings where the only sound would be the wind through glass. "How would you like to handle financing?" the agent asked, her voice cheerful but cautious. Martha smiled. "Cash." The agent blinked. "Full payment," Martha added, pulling out a printed bank letter. A surprise municipal bond left behind by her late husband had matured quietly in a credit union account, forgotten by everyone but her. She never touched it before. She had always thought she might leave it for Aaron. Not anymore. That night she returned to her small apartment, pulled off her shoes slowly, and stood in the quiet. Her coat still hung perfectly pressed. She sat by the window, opened a new leather-bound notebook, and began writing a list titled, "Things That Are Mine Again." She didn't include the house. She didn't need to. At Aaron's home, Camille was on a mission. She had started checking Martha's drawers under the guise of cleaning. It was subtle at first, lifting old receipts, flipping through bills. But today, her fingers landed on something more than junk mail, a brochure, thick paper, glossy finish. Camille frowned, unfolding it. Glenfield Estates. A 2-page spread of elegant rooms, panoramic balconies, a headline that read, "Retirement should feel like reward." Her eyes narrowed. She rushed to Aaron, waving the brochure. "Did you know your mom was touring retirement mansions while pretending she's broke?" Aaron looked up, distracted. "What?" "She's planning something," Camille snapped. "No one who drinks tap water and wears worn shoes leaves this lying around." He rubbed his temple. "Maybe she just took a tour." Camille's voice was colder than the room. "She's not just touring. She's moving. You need to find out what she's doing with her money. Camille places the brochure down and takes a photo of it. But what she doesn't see, what's tucked between the pages, is a small card. It reads, "To Ms. Martha Green, congratulations on your accepted offer." They thought they had me boxed in. I'd already built the exit. The envelope arrived quietly, tucked between a stack of mail, as if it were just another ad. But Aaron noticed it. His name wasn't on it. Hers was. Martha Carter, in bold ink. His mother's name had started showing up more and more, on mail, on packages, even in a couple of strange business listings he couldn't quite make sense of. It unnerved him, though he couldn't explain why. "What's this?" he asked, holding the envelope up like it was something that might bite. Camille looked up from the couch, where she sat half listening to a podcast about minimalist living. She arched one perfectly plucked brow and tossed a careless glance at the envelope. "Probably a magazine. Or more junk. Just throw it out." Aaron didn't throw it out. He slid it into the drawer beside his keys, but something lingered, a scent of tension, like smoke before a fire. By the following week, more envelopes followed. This time, one was from a title company. Another bore a legal seal. Camille intercepted the third one before Aaron did. She didn't open it, not immediately, but her grip on it was tight enough to wrinkle the edge. That night, over reheated takeout and lukewarm conversation, Camille said it. "Aaron, it's time your mother moved out." Aaron dropped his fork. "Excuse me?" "She's getting packages. Business mail. You said she wasn't working, right? So what's she doing? Reopening her life like nothing happened." "She's not hurting anyone," Aaron muttered, avoiding her eyes. Camille stood, her voice cool. "She's squatting, and she's making moves. You know she still gets in your head. Look at you. You don't even eat when she's home." Aaron didn't answer right away, but the next day, he knocked on Martha's door. His own mother's door, in her corner of the house that used to be called home, and stood stiffly in the doorway like a landlord. "You've got 30 days, Mom. I'm sorry, but it's time." Martha looked up from her chair where she had been calmly brushing her hair. Her expression didn't change. Not anger, not sadness, only stillness, like the quiet before a shift in the earth. She reached down beside her and pulled out a small folder. From it, she removed a single document, neatly folded, freshly notarized. She didn't say a word, just handed it to Aaron and waited. He unfolded it, the words blurring slightly as his eyes scanned the top line. "Notice of occupancy rights, protected partial owner." Then another line, "Eviction requires legal clearance through full judicial review." "I don't understand," Aaron whispered. "You will," Martha said, finally speaking. Her tone was soft, but the weight of it settled like stone. Camille was pacing the kitchen when he returned. "Well?" Aaron said nothing at first, just handed her the document and walked past her, heading for the liquor cabinet. The next day, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. A man in a navy suit stepped out with a leather briefcase. He approached the house with an air of quiet finality, rang the bell, and asked to speak to Aaron Carter. "I'm here on behalf of Ms. Martha Carter," he said, serving official notice of intent to claim partial ownership, effective immediately. Camille slammed the door in his face, but the papers had already been handed over. Martha stood at her window, watching it all unfold from her apartment. She was still, silent, her tea steeped beside her, the scent of bergamot rising in slow curls. She didn't smile, not yet. But she picked up her phone, tapped open her notes app, and typed a single sentence. Phase 2. Activate attorney. Prepare disclosure of asset folder. Outside, the sedan reversed down the driveway, leaving behind silence, and a house where the foundation was beginning to quake. A courier arrives, delivers an intent to claim form from Martha. "They offered me the attic. I bought a penthouse." The doorman smiled and tipped his cap as the elevator doors slid open. The ride up was smooth, almost too smooth, like her mind, cleared of everything but the scent of something new. Leather, polished chrome, quiet power. Martha stood still, the soft lighting reflecting off her tailored navy coat, her purse pressed firmly under her arm like a document of intent. The 32nd floor greeted her not with opulence, but with peace. The realtor stepped ahead, heels clicking gently across the hardwood. "Ms. Carter, this unit just became available last week. South-facing windows, pre-wired for security and sound. You won't hear a thing from neighbors." Martha stepped in. The view was a ribbon of city skyline stretched across the glass. Below, people moved like specks. She liked that. Small, distant. She could see the river, and somewhere to the far west, the shimmer of the town she once lived in. Or endured in, rather. A place where her name was a punchline, her presence an inconvenience. "This will do." Her voice didn't rise above a murmur, but it didn't need to. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here to claim space. As the papers were finalized, she added one thing the realtor didn't expect: cash. No mortgage. No need to verify anything. The woman blinked, tried to mask her surprise. Martha didn't blink back. Instead, she smiled, half warm, half steeled. Later that evening, she sat at her new kitchen island with a stack of documents spread before her. No family portraits, no half-eaten meals in sight, just legal folders, her estate planning binder, and a sleek fountain pen poised like a blade. She reviewed her will first, slowly, page by page. Old clauses were struck out, new beneficiaries added. The lawyer had left her with a checklist: accounts to rename, digital assets to secure, items to remove from the home she technically still co-owned. Co-owned, but only by law, not by loyalty, not by love. Then came the news. An email arrived, flagged urgent from her lawyer. "Aaron's consulting a separate attorney. He's trying to contest your ownership on the grounds of non-occupancy. Just letting you know, it won't hold." Martha stared at the screen for a moment, her fingers still on the glass of white wine beside her. She took one sip, then typed her response. "I'd like to freeze all modifications to the property, effective immediately." With one phone call, her lawyer filed the freeze with the county office. No renovations, no resale, no reallocation of equity. Everything now sat under a stifling legal pause, except for one thing Martha had waited patiently to pull. "Backdate the utilities," she said to her lawyer the next morning. "Split all bills 5 years back, every gas, water, electricity charge. I've paid my share. I'd like it documented." Her lawyer was quiet for a moment, then laughed softly. 5 years of shared occupancy, retroactively itemized. Clever. Martha didn't laugh. "It's fair." By Friday, the mail carrier slid a thick envelope into the Carter household mailbox. Camille pulled it out absent-mindedly, expecting another store promotion or influencer freebie. Instead, the words, "Recalculated billing summary. Due upon." Receipt stared up at her. She flipped through the pages, each one worse than the last. Gas, electric, water, internet, trash collection, amount due, $18,047.16. The numbers blurred. Camille's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her manicured fingers shook as she gripped the counter for balance. Up in the penthouse, Martha turned off the news, placed her feet into velvet slippers, and opened her patio doors. The breeze was gentle. The silence was hers. She didn't hear Camille scream, but she felt it, in her bones, in her breath, in the ground beneath them all. Camille receives a back bill notice for $18,000. "They gave me leftovers. I gave them legal garnish." The Carter dining room was dressed for the illusion of warmth. Cinnamon candles flickered on a table adorned with golden leaf garlands and neatly folded plaid napkins. But the atmosphere was as hollow as the smile Camille wore when she opened the door to greet their guests. Aaron stood stiff near the staircase, adjusting his collar as if it might choke the discomfort rising in his throat. There was an empty chair at the table, an obvious, deliberate vacancy. One of the cousins noticed. "Where's Martha?" he asked, placing a bottle of sparkling cider on the buffet. Camille barely flinched as she poured gravy over a too-dry turkey. "She's doing well. In assisted living now. She needs peace and quiet at her age." A few guests murmured sympathetically. One aunt nodded. "Oh, that's probably for the best. Those places can be lovely these days." Aaron kept his eyes down. His silence was both agreement and guilt. He hadn't spoken to his mother since the back bill notice arrived. Since then, Camille had been in damage control mode, trying to erase Martha's presence like wine on a carpet. But Martha hadn't disappeared. Across town, inside a warmly lit high-rise, the scent of roasted rosemary chicken wafted through the air. The laughter wasn't muted by resentment or pretense. It echoed freely across polished floors and modern counters. Martha, in an emerald silk blouse and a silver pendant that once belonged to her mother, stood at the head of her table, her own table. The guests were not blood, but they were kin in spirit. A retired librarian who'd lost her home in a divorce, a former art teacher rebuilding after cancer, a kind young lawyer who'd quietly helped Martha file a lien without charging her full rate. Each woman brought a dish. Each woman brought a story. Martha raised a glass. To the second servings that turned into first chances. Cheers clinked gently. No toasts were forced. No smiles were hollow. What no one at Aaron's table knew yet was that one of Camille's old colleagues had seen a video clip from Martha's dinner. It had been posted by the young lawyer, captioned, "Thankful for strong women who build again from broken." The view panned across a candle-lit table, stopping on Martha's quiet, powerful smile as she handed out plates. The colleague shared it, then others picked it up. By dessert, someone texted Aaron, "Thought your mom was in a facility? She looks pretty damn healthy here." He opened the video in the pantry, out of sight. As the clip played, his hands trembled, not because of anger but because it confirmed something terrifying. She had built an entirely new life, and he wasn't part of it. Worse, he didn't deserve to be. Camille caught the change in his face when he returned. "What?" she whispered through clenched teeth as she poured wine. He showed her the phone. "You lied. I didn't know she'd filmed something. Who cares? It's just a dinner." "No," Aaron said. "It's not just a dinner. It's her showing everyone she's just fine without us." Camille said nothing. But later that night, when she went upstairs, she found a small box on the front step, wrapped in neutral paper. No return address. Inside? A mop. The same kind she'd mailed Martha as a cruel birthday joke just weeks before. But this one had a tag. "Thought you might need this again. You missed a spot." Camille threw it against the wall, breath coming in ragged bursts. The next morning, Martha was already watering the lilies on her balcony when her phone buzzed. An email, flagged urgent. Subject, notice of legal representation, Aaron Carter. She didn't blink. She picked up the envelope she had prepared weeks ago and sealed it with a press of her thumb. It was addressed to her lawyer. Inside it, copies of deeds, utilities, and a timeline she'd curated with obsessive precision. The mop wasn't just a callback. It was a warning. And now the real cleanup was about to begin. Martha receives notice that Aaron hired a lawyer. She erased my name from her mouth. I put it back on the house. Aaron stared at the scanned deed glowing on his laptop screen, his breath stalling in his chest. The document was clear. His name and his mother's. Nowhere on it, not even in the fine print, was Camille mentioned. Not once. It was like realizing the foundation beneath your feet was never solid. Just performance. Just assumption. He leaned back in the dining chair, the one Martha used to sit in before Camille started setting her plate at the kitchen island like an afterthought. The same house she helped pay for. The same house Camille now stomped through as if she built it from brick herself. Camille appeared in the doorway, wineglass in hand, perfectly manicured fingers curled around the stem like claws. "Well?" she asked. Aaron didn't answer right away. She tilted her head, impatient. "Don't tell me you're seriously considering letting her win." Aaron rubbed his temple. "You're not even on the deed, Camille." Her face twitched. "What do you mean?" "It's only me and my mom. It always has been. You never signed anything. You never contributed." "I ran this house," Camille snapped, "while you and your mommy played family nostalgia. You really think I didn't earn a stake?" Aaron pushed the chair back. "This isn't about what you feel you earned. It's about what's legal." That word, legal, hung heavy between them. Camille laughed bitterly. "Well, then maybe it's time I lawyered up. Let's see how much she really thinks I'm worth." But that move had already been anticipated. 2 days later, a courier arrived with a packet from Martha's lawyer. Inside, a formal buyout offer. $27,000. Camille nearly dropped the papers. "She's joking, right?" she barked, shoving the papers at Aaron. "$27,000? For everything I put into this home?" Aaron didn't respond. He didn't have the energy. The walls were closing in on both of them, and Camille's voice had started sounding less like a partner and more like a liability. Camille grabbed her phone, red in the face. "You want war? Let's go. I'll burn her reputation down. She's not sweet, she's calculated. You think people want to side with a bitter old woman?" Aaron looked up sharply. "Don't!" But it was too late. Camille was already recording. She strutted into the backyard, phone tilted just right, voice dripping faux sincerity. Sometimes the people who smile the most hide the darkest intentions. Elderly or not, manipulation comes in all ages. By the time she finished the video and posted it to her social feed with the caption number, "Protect Our Homes," Martha was already 10 steps ahead. Because Martha, quiet and methodical, had her own footage from a baby monitor camera she had once left in her room, the one Camille thought she'd unplugged. The video showed Camille one morning with a cup of coffee in hand, speaking on a call in the hallway, laughing as she said, "Old carpet. That's what she smells like. Honestly, I could vacuum her and toss her out." Martha never raised her voice in the recording. She never confronted her then. She just stood in the doorway, unseen, listening, memorizing. Now, she didn't have to say a word. Her lawyer released the video with a timestamp and a short statement. "Character speaks even when unprovoked." It exploded online. Camille's post was immediately flooded with comments. "This you? Imagine mocking someone who gave you a roof. You're the reason people record everything now." And by noon, the final blow came quietly. An email from her employer. Subject, HR review, pending suspension. Camille's hand shook as she read the line. "Due to a potential violation of conduct standards, you are suspended without pay pending investigation." Across town, Martha sat in her balcony chair, legs tucked under a knitted throw. She sipped from a mug, steam rising in gentle spirals. She didn't gloat. She simply smiled into the breeze, knowing full well the storm was only just beginning. For someone else this time, Camille's boss sees the video. She's suspended from work. They made room for everyone but me, so I made sure there wasn't any left for them. The sound of a stapler echoed against the polished wood walls of the county office as Martha affixed the final page of her legal filing. The clerk glanced at the paperwork, stamped it, and slid it back across the counter. 51% ownership confirmed, he said, smiling faintly. "You'll receive the full update by mail." Martha nodded, her expression calm, almost serene, but behind that softness was a wall of iron. For months, she'd watched from the shadows, heard the whispered jokes, the fake gratitude, felt the cold shoulder at every dinner table. The same house she helped fund, where she'd once rocked Aaron to sleep, had become a place where she was treated like a relic, a burden. Now, the legal tide had turned, permanently. Back at Aaron's house, the news landed like a slow, creeping storm. Camille was the first to open the certified letter. The moment her eyes scanned the bolded header, "Tenancy notice, 30 days to comply," her shriek echoed down the hall. Aaron came running, still in his undershirt, toothbrush in hand. "She can't do this," Camille hissed, holding the papers out like they were on fire. "She's turning us into tenants, on our own property." Aaron read the letter once, then twice. His shoulders sagged like someone slowly giving in to a truth they'd been avoiding. "She's not turning us into anything. She's just exercising her rights." Camille's voice rose. "Rights? She's your mother, not your landlord." "She's both," Aaron muttered, folding the letter and rubbing his face. "You know she owns more than half the place. It's not even a debate anymore." Camille's rage simmered into a bitter smile. "Fine. You want us to pay rent now, like strangers? She'll regret it. She doesn't want the bad PR this'll bring." But Martha had never cared about PR. Later that afternoon, a property manager arrived on her behalf, professional, polite, and completely unmoved by Camille's fury. The owner has requested first and last month's rent to be deposited by the 1st, he said, handing over a rental agreement. If it's not paid, we'll proceed with formal eviction proceedings. Camille, livid, crumpled the paper and stormed off. Aaron remained. He didn't yell. He didn't object. He just stood in the living room for a long time, staring at the walls, maybe remembering the years before Camille. The way the house smelled like cinnamon when his mother baked, the quiet, safe evenings when she hummed while watering the plants. Those years felt like someone else's story now. A week passed, then 2. Camille attempted one last performance, a dramatic doorstep moment where she held Martha's hand, eyes glossy with tears. "I didn't mean any of it, you know. I was just overwhelmed. I've always admired you." Martha didn't flinch. She simply replied, "Cruelty cloaked in stress is still cruelty." And she shut the door. The 30 days came quickly. Martha didn't watch them pack. She didn't look at the photos Camille angrily posted online, portraying herself as a victim. She had no interest in correcting the record anymore. Truth, she had learned, didn't need a megaphone. It had a rhythm of its own, one that always caught up. Then, on a soft Tuesday morning, the doorbell to Martha's new condo rang. She opened it and found Aaron standing there, alone, hands in pockets, hair unkempt. He looked smaller somehow, younger but not in a good way. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I'm not here to fight," he said softly. Martha studied his face, creased with guilt, haunted by indecision. She stepped aside, wordlessly inviting him in. But as he crossed the threshold, she could already feel the weight of a decision forming behind his visit. He was no longer bringing conflict. He was bringing something else, a reckoning. Aaron shows up to Martha's new condo, alone. "They called me bitter. I was just finally full." The hallway echoed with Aaron's hesitant footsteps, his every step a quiet apology. He clutched a paper bag of pastries from the local bakery, still warm, still smelling of cinnamon and nostalgia. But even the sweetness in his hands couldn't mask the bitterness lingering between them. Martha opened the door slowly, her expression unreadable. No apron, no smile. Just a woman in control of her silence, standing in a condo whose calm elegance mirrored her new life. Light gray walls, soft sunlight filtering in through clean glass, a vase of fresh lilies on the side table. "I brought something," Aaron said quietly, holding up the bag like a peace treaty. Martha didn't reach for it. "You can come in. For now." He stepped inside, eyes darting to the art on her walls, the polished floors, the soft jazz playing low from a speaker. It felt more like a curated retreat than the woman he used to take for granted. "I didn't come to defend Camille," he began, placing the bag down on the counter like it mattered. "I came because she's gone." Martha looked at him, her hands still enfolded. "She left 3 weeks ago," he said, "took what was left in the joint account, moved out while I was at work, left a note, said I ruined her future by not protecting her from you." A small exhale left Martha's nose, dry, nearly invisible. She didn't laugh, didn't gloat. She simply walked over to her chair and sat. Aaron remained standing. "I've filed for divorce," he said, his voice softer now. "I know it's too late, but I want to make things right. I let her run the show. I let her talk to you that way. I thought keeping the peace meant keeping quiet." "You didn't keep quiet," Martha said finally, voice cool but steady. "You kept complicit." The air thickened. Aaron's shoulders slumped. "You're right." Martha leaned forward slightly, her eyes sharp, not cruel, but clear. "You let her erase me in my own home. You watched her serve me cold food, laughed at her jokes, called me too sensitive when I asked for a seat at the table I helped pay for. And now that she's left you, you remember how to call me Mom?" Aaron swallowed hard. "I thought if I didn't choose sides I was being neutral. I see now. I chose hers every time I didn't speak up." Martha nodded once, then rose to her feet. "You didn't protect me, Aaron. Not once. You let her chip away at my dignity until I had to rebuild it brick by brick, alone." "I didn't know she forged my signature on those refinance papers," he said, guilt flickering in his eyes. "She said it was just paperwork, said she was handling things. Like always. Martha stepped toward the door. "I'm sorry," he said again, quieter this time. "Not just for what she did, for what I didn't do." She reached for the handle and opened the door. "I hope you find peace," she said, her tone gentle but immovable. "I already did." And she closed it. Outside, the hallway echoed with his retreating footsteps, a soft thud of soles over tile. He didn't knock again. Inside, Martha leaned against the closed door, exhaling through her nose. Her eyes were dry, her spine straight. She wasn't mourning the departure, only marveling at how long it had taken. Her phone buzzed. A new email. Subject line: invitation to speak. Women's Housing and Property Rights Summit, San Francisco. She tapped it open. "We followed your legal case through the real estate boards and social media. Your strength and story have become an inspiration for older women navigating property injustice. Would you be willing to speak at our annual conference next month?" Her fingers hovered above the screen. A quiet smile crept across her lips. Not prideful, but firm. Steady. She clicked. Reply. Martha receives an offer to speak at a women's property rights conference. They burned bridges. I built a road. The envelope was thick, heavier than junk mail. No return address, just Martha's name in blocky print across the front, the kind of handwriting a printer couldn't imitate and a stranger wouldn't bother faking. She slid it open with her thumb. Inside, 3 folded legal notices. Her eyes scanned the first one. Foreclosure notice. The address? Aaron and Camille's house. But it wasn't from any bank she recognized. Her gaze narrowed. The second document confirmed it. A lien filed against the property. Martha knew she hadn't initiated it. Then came the third. A purchase inquiry filed under Camille's name, listing herself as the sole owner, attempting to negotiate a silent cash buyout through a third-party agent. The date? 2 weeks ago. The paper trembled slightly in her fingers, but her face remained still. Her instincts told her it wasn't just desperation, it was deception. And Camille wasn't acting alone. Someone had enabled this, or at the very least ignored the signs. Martha rose from her desk chair, the quiet glide of her slippers across hardwood nearly silent under the weight of revelation. She pulled open her filing drawer and retrieved her latest communication with the lawyer. Her fingers didn't shake. She was past anger now, past betrayal. She was ready. Later that day, she sat across from her attorney, a calm storm in pearls and a tailored navy cardigan. She tried to initiate a private sale, Martha said, sliding the documents forward. Claimed full ownership. My name's not even mentioned. The lawyer flipped through the pages, jaw tightening. "That's fraudulent," he said. "And the foreclosure notice? That's fake. This bank hasn't held your loan in over 2 years." Martha's voice was quiet. "Can we do anything with this?" He looked up. "We can do everything." By the end of the week, a full investigation had been opened into Camille's actions. Her attempt to stage a private transfer without Martha's consent or knowledge was a direct breach of state property law, given Martha's confirmed partial ownership. Martha's phone buzzed later that night. Aaron. She let it ring. He texted minutes after. "Mom, what's going on? A lawyer just called me? Camille's in trouble?" She replied with a single line. "You should have checked the smoke before calling it steam." The next morning, Camille's world cracked like thin glass under heat. A courier arrived at their doorstep, handing her an envelope stamped with the court's seal. Inside, a restraining order. Not from Martha, from the district court. The charges? Attempted fraudulent sale, falsification of ownership, and interference with a legal estate agreement. Camille's shriek echoed across the cul-de-sac as neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Aaron was stunned. Martha knew because he left a voicemail at 11:03 p.m. "I swear I didn't know. She said it was just paperwork to shift things. I never— God, Mom, I didn't sign anything." Martha listened. Once, then deleted it. The next morning, she wore her softest blouse, tucked into high-waisted slacks, and stepped into the county clerk's office. Calm, ready. "I'm here to file for full ownership and liquidation of the Carter residence," she said, handing the documents forward. "It's time the house came home." The clerk raised a brow, impressed. "You've got everything lined up?" "I do now." Martha replied. The gavel hadn't dropped yet, but the end had begun. Camille was silenced, Aaron stunned, and the foundation they thought they'd buried her under was now a road paved in evidence and resolve. And as Martha walked out of the courthouse, a soft drizzle kissed the sidewalks. Cleansing, not cold. She paused beneath her umbrella and looked at the gray sky, letting her lips curve into something small and final. Martha legally files for full ownership and liquidation. The nest may be empty, but now it's mine again. The sound of the moving truck pulling away was oddly gentle, like a long exhale after holding your breath too long. Martha stood on the porch one last time, her palms pressed against the wooden frame of the front door that had once witnessed so much: love, betrayal, and finally, reclamation. She didn't cry. The house on Birch Lane had been many things: a gift, a battlefield, a statement. But it wasn't her home anymore, not in the way she needed it to be. Now she craved space not defined by memories or manipulation. By early afternoon, she was standing inside a white stucco bungalow just 3 blocks from the coast. The salt air brushed against her cheeks as the realtor handed over the keys. "Welcome home, Ms. Carter," the woman said, smiling warmly. Martha smiled back, soft but real. "Thank you. It already feels like peace." The cottage was modest. 2 bedrooms, wide windows, floors that creaked just enough to feel familiar. In the corner of the front room sat an empty easel. She'd asked the movers to place it there first. Later that week, she cracked open her long-forgotten paint box. The brushes were still stained from years ago, colors trapped like old secrets. She dipped one into a jar of water and let the bristles stir slowly. An old rhythm coming back to life. Her first stroke across the canvas was shaky. The second? Smoother. By the third, she was humming under her breath, painting a pale pink sunrise over a winding road, one she now walked alone, one she chose. In the following days, neighbors trickled by. Some left welcome baskets, others offered invites for coffee or book clubs. Martha accepted only one. A hand-delivered note slid under her door from a woman down the block named Greta. It read, "Thanks for showing me how to say no. Watching your story unfold taught me something I never had the courage to learn. If you ever want to talk or paint together, I'm here." Martha stood in the kitchen with the note pressed gently between her fingers. No glitter, no forced flourish, just raw gratitude. She smiled, turned to the fridge, and pinned it beneath a magnet shaped like a seashell. The breeze outside carried faint traces of ocean salt and garden roses. For the first time in years, Martha opened every window in the house. No alarms, no cameras, just fresh air. Her phone buzzed once that afternoon, an automated alert that the sale of the Birch Lane house had officially closed, the final chapter inked, no turning back. That evening, she walked barefoot across the cool tiles, her silk robe whispering at her ankles. The quiet no longer felt like absence, it felt earned. At dusk, a delivery driver appeared at her doorstep. No return label, just a simple brown parcel wrapped in plain craft paper. She signed for it without thinking, placed it on her kitchen table, and poured herself a glass of water. She opened the package slowly. Inside, cushioned in tissue paper, was a small black velvet box. Her fingers paused. A flicker of something tightened in her chest. Not fear, not sadness, something stranger. Recognition. She lifted the lid. Inside was Camille's wedding ring, the same custom band she'd once flaunted like a crown, engraved with her and Aaron's initials. Now, stripped of meaning, it sat cold and alone. Tucked beneath the box was a note in Camille's unmistakable cursive, "You can keep the foundation. I have nothing left to build on." Martha stared at the words for a long time. She didn't smile, didn't frown. She folded the note, placed it beside Greta's on the fridge, and walked back to her easel. She dipped her brush back into blue. The next stroke swept clean across the canvas, the color deep and unwavering. Martha receives a package, Camille's wedding ring inside. "They thought I was worn out. I was just weathered, and stronger than ever." The morning sunlight filtered through the linen curtains like a whisper, soft and golden. touching every surface of Martha's coastal home with quiet reverence. She stood barefoot in her modest kitchen, holding a check in her hand. Not for her, but for a local nonprofit that helped elderly women navigate housing insecurity. Her signature sat at the bottom, firm and deliberate, a name they once tried to erase. The check wasn't massive, not enough to build an empire, but enough to save someone else's dignity. Someone who might have been served leftovers, too. Someone whose name might have been forgotten. As she sealed the envelope, her mind wandered back to the first time Camille joked about her smelling like old carpet. It used to sting. Now it barely registered. She'd carried that insult for months like a wound, but it had become something else. Entirely. A compass. A flint. They mocked the carpet, she whispered with a dry chuckle, but I was the concrete. Outside, the ocean breeze moved through the garden she'd planted with her own hands. It wasn't much, just herbs, a few tomato vines and a line of lavender along the fence. But it was hers. She tended to it every day. No one told her she was in the way here. The mail came late that afternoon. Tucked between a catalog and a local arts magazine was a thick envelope, cream-colored, sealed with a wax stamp. Erin's handwriting marked the front. She sat on her porch swing, the sky above streaked with coral and gold, and opened it slowly. The letter was long, folded into thirds. No apology in the greeting, no formal sign-off, just Erin's words, sincere, remorseful, late. He said Camille had left for good, that he'd filed for divorce and started therapy. He said he now understood what he'd let happen, that he should have stood up, not just watched, that he was sorry. Martha read it once, then twice. Her expression didn't change. She folded the letter, walked back inside, and opened the small fireplace tucked into the corner of the living room. The flame was weak at first, then strong. The paper curled in on itself, then blackened. She watched every word disappear, line by line as if it had never existed. Some apologies weren't meant to be kept. Later, with the stars just beginning to dot the sky, she walked barefoot into her garden, the soil still warm from the sun. Her robe brushed softly against the rosemary bush as she made her way to the bench tucked beneath the bougainvillea. She sat down, the wooden slats creaking under her but holding strong. A small silver radio hummed beside her, tuned to a late-night station. A gentle voice spoke. Tonight's segment features a woman who rewrote the ending they tried to hand her, a grandmother, a widow, and now a symbol of silent power rediscovered. Martha Carter's story has gone viral across platforms, with her latest donation shining light on systemic financial abuse against the elderly. Martha smiled, not because she wanted recognition, but because the right story had finally been told. Not the one they spun about her bitterness or burden, the real one. The woman who gave was dismissed and rose anyway. A breeze lifted the hem of her robe. Somewhere in the distance, waves crashed. Somewhere in the city, Camille was packing up the pieces of a life built on borrowed foundation. And somewhere, maybe, Erin was learning to walk without leaning on silence. But here, in this garden, under this sky, was a woman who remembered everything and finally forgot nothing about herself. She rose from the bench, turned toward her home, and whispered, "I didn't just take the house back. I took me back. Turns out, I was never the dust. I was the foundation beneath them all."